Okay, so back to my PowerPoint presentation here. So the next application I want to share with you is Microsoft OneNote. Who here has heard of OneNote? That's good. Who here has used OneNote? That's pretty good. Who here uses OneNote as a core part of your professional life? So I call that, some of you have had the OneNote moment. And in a minute or two, I'm going to try to give you that OneNote moment. I've had my OneNote moment where I was among the second people who raised their hands, where I use it now and again, but not full-on adoption. But I had my OneNote moment, and I'm going to share with you my OneNote moment, and hopefully you'll then have your OneNote moment after that. So we think of OneNote as, again, an expansive canvas that's optimized for voice, digital ink, keyboard, mouse, documents, screen scrapes, images, video. You can drop any kind of content on the OneNote canvas. That makes it different than Word, makes it different than PowerPoint. It's more similar to Office Sway in some ways. It also makes it different than, well, pretty much any other application I've ever used before. And there's two key concepts that I want to make sure I explain around Office OneNote. One is around its organizational structure, and then the other is around real-time collaboration. When I talk to educators about OneNote, they're usually familiar with one of these, but not the other. And for me, that's where my OneNote moment happened. So the organizational structure is super simple. There's tabs across the top, we call those sections, and tabs across the side, we call those pages. It allows educators to organize their content in a way that's natural for them. Not prescribed by the product, but in a way that's natural for them. And the other point I want to get across is its real-time nature. So you can have a OneNote that multiple people are using simultaneously, because it's stored in the cloud. Multi-device, works on your Android, works on your iPhone, works on your Windows Phone, works on Windows, works on your Mac, and so forth. And you real-time collaborate within this interactive canvas. Now, one thing about organization, Microsoft's done a lot of research, it turns out, on how people organize their digital life. And it turns out there's generally two types of organizers. Maybe you've heard this. There's pilers. Any pilers in the room? You know who you are. Yeah. And then there's filers. Any filers in the room? Educators are usually pretty high on the filer scale. Though we all sort of sit in between depending on what the task is. And so one of the tasks that educators talk to us about is, could you help us automate the process of setting up or provisioning my classroom with OneNote? In other words, I have X number of sessions, I have X number of students, I know who those students are, can you just do the needful on my behalf? And so recently, Microsoft has come up with this product that we call OneNote Class Notebook. And it allows educators to easily set up a collaboration space. You can easily set up a content library, and you can also set up a student network. The collaboration space is where I want my students to do their group exercises, so they can interact with that real-time live, and me as the educator can interact with them directly as well. Content library is where I'm going to put my lessons, so that's read-only. Don't want kids messing with my content library. But I want them to have access to it, of course, and I want them to have access to every change I make going forward. And then student notebooks is where I provision X number of notebooks for each of the students in my class. And they all get access to the content library, and they get access to the collaboration space. And now we're all nice and neatly organized into one canvas. Now what the student gets is the student simply gets an email, magic happens, student simply gets an email that says, good news, your teacher has set up a class notebook on your behalf. Click here to go view it. And if I happen to be in a browser, it pops up. If I'm on OneNote for Windows, it pops up. If I'm on OneNote on other devices, it pops up. And it continuously synchronizes everything my teacher does and everything I do and everything all my classmates do is continually synchronized into this one notebook. And so for the pilers that want to be more like a filer because you want OneNote to save you time, this tool really helps enable you to do that. And that's what we hear from educators all the time, is OneNote saves me time. It gives me cycles back. I'm spending less time in the evenings and weekends doing non-value add administrative work. Let me give you another example of what OneNote is by example of what it's not. And this hopefully will ring true with some of you. is, say I have 40 lessons, well, maybe that's 40 documents or 40 websites. Say I have 40 assignments that I need to grade. That's probably 40 documents or 40 websites. Well, traditionally, what would happen if I wanted to make my way through that content? I'd first have to find it, because it's in a folder, hopefully somewhere, maybe on the web, maybe on one of my devices. And then I'd have to click through 40 times. That's pretty inefficient. With OneNote, it's all nice and neatly organized into those tabs. And so I simply have to click to each of the tabs, which is continuously synchronized, so it's the most recent version no matter what. By the way, I don't have to bring my laptop home, because the OneNote is stored in the cloud, and I can use my home PC to access my OneNote. I can use my phone to access my OneNote. My students can use their phone to access their OneNote. You get the idea. How about a demo? So I thought I would demo OneNote to you by sharing with you some content that educators have created. So this isn't content Microsoft produced, it's content educators have created. And so here's my sections across the top, I mentioned that earlier, and my pages across the bottom. I can also choose to sort of pin this open and get access to all of my notebooks. I have notebooks on all sorts of personal stuff, and I have notebooks on all sorts of professional stuff. It's all organized into this book, and I don't have to have my device with me to access any of this content. I've made that point. So let me take a spin through some of the content that some educators have produced. So here's an interesting one. So some educator produced a lesson on Egyptian numbers. And Egyptian numbers, I learned just by looking at this assignment. I don't remember having a lesson like this in school. It turns out there's not really a keyboard equivalent to that little fish-looking thing up in the upper right-hand side. So it's a good thing that in my OneNote, I in fact have this expansive canvas that I can draw on if I have a touchscreen, or if not, no problem, you can draw on it with your mouse. Next one I want to show you is this jazz assignment. And so this is an interesting one because you first look at it and it looks like somebody ate a jazz assignment for lunch and then ended up dropping a jazz assignment, on this expansive canvas. It doesn't look particularly well organized, but in fact, this educator did a fantastic job of curating content that exists. I'm pretty sure he didn't take these pictures on the left-hand side. He found them from the web. Typed some notes in the middle and outlined the curriculum. Went and found some audio files, because how best to learn about jazz than to listen to some jazz. So embedded some audio files into the OneNote. Thanks for that. Also embedded some PowerPoint presentations and Word documents. And so in this sense, this teacher simply wanted the lesson to be in one place to make the classroom experience efficient. Or maybe it wasn't in a classroom at all. Maybe the assignment was simply left in OneNote, pushed, synchronized to students' devices, and it was a flipped classroom scenario where I got access to the content ahead of time, and we used classroom time for interactive assignments. Now, a couple other quick ones to show you is, one is I liked this middle school math example, because math is just hard to do with a keyboard. All these funky symbols and things. And so math kind of wants a pen and paper in a lot of ways. Science often wants for a pen and paper in a lot of ways. And OneNote is a fantastic canvas to use digital ink, either with the stylus, with your finger, or with the mouse.